Hey there, all you beautiful souls. I hope your day has been absolutely fantastic. It's a pleasure to have you back for yet another exciting episode of What If Naruto Was the Descendant of Scorpion. Don't forget to pay a visit to the author of this captivating fanfiction and show them some love. You'll find the link waiting for you down in the description. Uzumaki Naruto sacrificed his life to protect the precious person, but instead of going to the afterlife, Naruto finds himself face to face with the remains of a soul that was locked away deep within his own soul. A soul filled with fury and vengeance of a family and clan that was taken from him. How will this chance meeting change Naruto, and will it be for better? If this what if is sparking your curiosity, drop a comment down below and share your thoughts. And while you're at it, don't miss out on exploring the plethora of other intriguing what ifs available on this very channel. Alright, let's not keep you waiting any longer. Let's dive right into this thought-provoking video. In one eye, Itachi saw the image of a warrior wearing white robes with a cloth blue vest and gold armor pads, his face shadowed by a conical, straw hat. Beneath the straw hat were glowing blue eyes that radiate with electricity, with streaks of lightning going across his body. Across from him was Shao Kahn flying into the sky with golden dragons encircling him, screaming in fury. And in the other eye, he could see Shao Kahn staggering back in terror and agony with a hole in his chest, as in front of him stood a shirtless black-haired man with red and black martial arts pants and a red headband with his right arm soaked in blood. "So those are who you fear?" Itachi murmured with a growing smirk on his face. "It seems despite all of your souls, you can be defeated," Itachi noted, his vision blurring once again, causing the golden chains to crack even further. "I have to end this," Itachi said as he gripped his kunai and began to approach the struggling Shao Kahn, but then he coughed, causing blood to fall from his lips, and he staggered backwards. His vision was darkening, but he could see wisps of red energy flowing from body, and just as his sight faded away, he heard Shao Kahn let out a mighty roar, and the chain snap. The world seemed to shatter like glass before the world flipped back to normal, and all of the shinobi that bound Shao Kahn flew away from him as the red energy exploded around him, causing a bright red light to envelop the area. When that light faded, there was a large crater and tons of dust around the surrounding crater, where Shao Kahn stood in the middle, looking slightly winded from expending so much energy. "I didn't expect to use so much to break out of that," Shao Kahn thought to himself as he floated out of crater and looked around the area. He didn't understand why, but his body felt different after freeing himself from that technique. He couldn't figure out why, but he forced it from his mind. After a few seconds, he saw a figure burst through the dirt, and it was the one who held him captive. Itachi panted heavily as dirt fell from his shoulders, not aware that Shao Kahn was floating down in front of him. Itachi's vision began to clear, and he saw Shao Kahn standing before him, red aura flowing from the man's body. "There is a weakness to you after all," Shao Kahn taunted as he reached forward and grabbed Itachi by the neck and lifted him up into the air. "It's too bad it's cost you," Shao Kahn said. His eyes began to glow a bright red. Without warning, Kakashi's foot slammed into Shao Kahn's face, sending Shao Kahn staggering to the right while releasing Itachi from his grasp. Kakashi landed on the ground and charged towards Shao Kahn and punched his stomach and then delivered an uppercut, but Shao Kahn caught the fist, crushed it in his hand, and landed two hard jabs at Kakashi's face, sending Kakashi onto one knee. Shao Kahn laughed as he lifted his foot and kicked Kakashi in the face twice as he said, "How pathetic!" before ending it with a hard knee to the face, sending Kakashi to the ground. Shao Kahn then stepped on the arm and pointed his middle and index finger at Kakashi's torso, red energy now flowing from his fingertips. "Now die!" Shao Kahn muttered hatefully before firing bolts of red energy that pierced Kakashi's chest and exited his back, causing Kakashi's eyes to bug out in agony with every shot that entered him. Before he could finish Kakashi off, Shao Kahn heard footsteps coming from behind him. Shao Kahn turned around only to get kicked in the face by an enraged Sakura and Karui, which caused him to take a step backwards. The pair of kunoichi then advanced forward and began to rapidly punch at him as best as they can, but Shao Kahn blocked each quick strike. He then caught Sakura's hand and slung her to the left, sending her to the ground, before grabbing Karui's extended leg and smirked before punching her knee, breaking her kneecap and bending her leg in the opposite direction. Karui tried to scream, but Shao Kahn released her leg and reached forward to grab her face, lift her into the air, delivered a brutal choke slam to the ground, where he then said, "Goodbye, lightning girl." Red beams of energy began to flowing through his fingertips as Karui clawed at his wrists as hard as she could. Sakura came to the rescue by running forward and slamming her knee into the side of Shao Kahn's head, sending the larger man off of her. Sakura ran towards Shao Kahn, who rolled to his feet and swayed from left to right from Sakura's punch before he grabbed the hand and began to crush it, breaking Sakura's hand. Sakura let out a scream of pain before they were reduced to gasps as Shao Kahn then kneed her in the stomach 3 times before pulling him backwards and kicking her chest hard enough to break 2 ribs upon impact. Sakura staggered backwards, barely managed to dodge Shao Kahn's fist and managed to block the punch aimed at her head, but was kicked once again in the chest, sending her skidding to the ground beside Karui. Shao Kahn lifted his hand and a red orb appeared in his hand. "Goodbye," Shao Kahn said before he heard "Bunbun Baika no Jutsu, arm." Shao Kahn was suddenly decked in the right side of his jaw, sending him soaring a few feet away. "Choji!" both Sakura and Karui exclaimed, although Karui's eyes were brimming with tears. Blood dripped from the front of Choji's shirt as he held the spot with his usable arm, sweat dripping from his forehead. "Sakura, get Karui out of here now." "Why?" Sakura asked. Choji let out a small grin as he removed his hand from his wounds and pulled out the glass case that held only 1 red pill left from his pocket. "Because I don't want her or you to die," Choji replied. Sakura nodded and hoisted Karui to her feet with her usable arm, who instantly tried push away from Sakura, but Sakura gripped her close. "You can't beat him alone, Choji. We can help." Choji turned to Karui and said, "I'd rather you guys get away. Kakashi-san is gone. Sensei is gone. Kurinai-san is gone. Shino, Kiba, Akamaru, they are gone as well. I won't let you two or anyone else die, not when I have the power to stop it." Choji then lifted the glass container to his mouth and chewed it up. Suddenly, his pupils grew small before he hunched over in pain. "Choji," Karui said in alarm. Choji then let out a large scream as an overload of chakra filled his veins before they exploded, causing an intense light to form around him, blinding both Sakura and Karui. Seconds later, a wave of chakra-shaped butterflies flew from the orb before the light faded, revealing a thinner Choji with 2 huge chakra-shaped butterfly wings sprouting out from his back. "Holy shit," Sakura murmured. Karui's eyes widened at the sight of the shinobi. She found him cute and charming at first, but like this, he was very handsome, especially with that dangerous edge in his eyes. "Go," Choji said to the two, his eyes locked on Shao Kahn's slowly standing body. "Quickly, be careful, Choji," Karui said with worry in her voice. "We have a date after all this." Choji lifted his good arm and gave her a thumbs up, a sincere smile on his face. Sakura and Karui quickly took off and Choji's smile melted into a look of sadness. "I'm sorry, Karui, after this, I won't be able to go on that date with you. I hope you forgive me one day." He then turned back to Shao Kahn and said, "You've killed so many people. It's time I end this." Hearing this declaration, Shao Kahn smirked at the youth and said, "Try and fail, just like the others." Choji narrowed his eyes and darted towards Shao Kahn, a trail of chakra following him, and cocked his arm and aimed a punch at Shao Kahn's head. Shao Kahn blocked the punch, but then he winced as the force of the blow caused him to skid. "What the?" Shao Kahn thought with alarm. Choji darted to the left and aimed another punch at Shao Kahn's side, but Shao Kahn blocked that, but again, that pain shot through his hand. Choji darted around Shao Kahn, trying to get a good hit on the man, but despite his speed, Shao Kahn managed to block each strike. "Are you even trying to high dash?" Shao Kahn's taunt was interrupted by the hard haymaker to Shao Kahn's face, causing a shockwave of chakra to fly from the spot of impact. Shao Kahn flew to the left and skidded across the ground before he pushed himself off the ground and landed on his feet. But then Shao Kahn noticed something. He was slightly dizzy. Choji dashed forward and used his charred arm to hit Shao Kahn in the face, but when Shao Kahn blocked it, Choji landed a brutal punch to Shao Kahn's side, causing another shockwave to appear at the point of impact. Shao Kahn felt his eyes widen before he was then nailed with a hard jab, sending Shao Kahn soaring backwards and crashing against the ground. Shao Kahn rose to his feet and narrowed his eyes in both anger and curiosity. "I should be shrugging all of these attacks off, and yet I'm in pain. Am I growing weaker?" Shao Kahn mentally scowled, taking stock of all the souls he has before he thought, "No, I have so many souls powering me up. But then why am I feeling weaker?" Shao Kahn thought within his head. He. A mysterious voice murmured, but it was so faint and broken up, Shao Kahn didn't register it. Choji darted towards Shao Kahn again and threw another haymaker, but Shao Kahn avoided it and kicked the shinobi in the face, causing Choji to skid backwards before dashing forward and nailing Choji in the left side of his face, sending the Akimichi to the ground. Choji rolled away from the attempted stomp from Shao Kahn and flipped to his feet and delivered a rising uppercut, nailing Shao Kahn in the head and sending him staggering backwards. Choji took a step forward and aimed another fist to Shao Kahn's face, but Shao Kahn caught the arm, spun him 360 degrees and then launched Choji high into the air. Choji soared, but with a yell, stopped his soaring and began to gather all of his chakra into his usable hand and then clenched his fist, causing several large, thick streams of chakra to flow from it. "Time to end it!" Choji then shouted as he launched himself to Shao Kahn at breakneck speed. Shao Kahn looked up and summoned red energy into his hand and said, "Yes, child, this will end it," Choji screamed. "Choden Bakudiki, butterfly bullet bombing!" As he cocked his arm back and just as he got close to Shao Kahn to throw the punch, Shao Kahn thrusted his hand up and pierced through Choji's chest, his hand piercing through Choji's heart. Despite this, Choji managed to land a solider punch to Shao Kahn's face, causing a huge shockwave of chakra to flow down Shao Kahn's body, breaking his jaw, left eye socket, cracked his spine, broke 3 ribs and his right hip. The chakra then went through him to the ground beneath them, causing the ground to crack the ground and then cause a grand explosion of chakra several feet around them. In the distance, Karui and Sakura saw the large shockwave of chakra, with Sakura lowering her head to say a prayer while Karui screamed out, "Choji!" The butterfly wings exploded into several butterflies as Choji's pupils faded away, a blood-soaked grin on his face while Shao fell to the ground, his pupils faded but still visible. He felt Choji's body fall to the ground while he fell to his knees. Choji's soul floated out from Choji's body in front of Shao Kahn's face, and despite the pain that radiated through his body that nearly caused him to pass out, Shao Kahn held his hand and forced the soul into his chest. With some difficulty, he absorbed the soul and his pupils returned and the wounds he accumulated from that attack began to heal. That nearly unbelievable, Shao Kahn thought as he looked to Choji's dead body. A mere child was able to do that. Impressive. Something may be weakening me, but that was truly unexpected. Shao Kahn stood onto his feet and stumbled back slightly before making his way out of the crater Choji's attack had made. Karui said this and felt her heart break. "Choji! No!" Karui screamed, tears falling from her anger-filled eyes as she pushed Sakura away began to form hand seals. "Karui, no! Choji wanted us to escape!" Sakura shouted in alarm. "I don't care if this is going to kill me or not. I'm going to kill him for what he's done!" Karui screamed, now enraged. Lightning began to streak the sky as Karui clapped her hands together and shouted, "I'll kill him with this! Raitan, Kaminari Mitsuji!" Another bolt of lightning streaked the sky before a final one flew down and struck Karui, who let out a brief scream of agony before the streak vanished, showing Karui's entire body was covered in lightning, only her glowing embers showing in the bright white silhouette. With an otherworldly scream, the silhouette rushed away from Sakura and crashed into a still shaken Shao Kahn's chest, sending both of them streaking across the ground and crashed through a ruined building and out the other side. Shao Kahn let out a roar as he grabbed the silhouette's head and slammed it down to the ground, but Karui shot right back up and slammed into his right shoulder and then to his left, a warbled scream leaving her lips with each strike to the Khan's body. An orb of electricity began to form with each quick strike that Karui's electrified body managed to land on Shao Kahn, making him growl in pain and in fury. The dome of electricity was thick when Shao Kahn yelled, "Enough of this!" Shao Kahn yelled as an explosion of red energy escaped his body. Just as Karui's electrified body darted towards him, Shao Kahn slammed his fist against the silhouette's head, sending Karui down to the ground. She darted up and landed 3 successful blows against his body, but when Karui darted for him again, he moved to the side and grabbed her leg and pulled her back down and grabbed her head. Despite the intense agony of the lightning coursing through his body, Shao Kahn shouted, "This is the end of you!" and began to pull at both her leg and head, the red energy flying from his body, which caused Karui to let out a scream. "I'll take you with me!" Karui's warbled voice screamed as her electrified hands clasped together, which caused her electrified body to shine bright, readying itself to release all of it in an explosion. Karui's warbled screaming was silenced as Shao Kahn ripped the silhouette in half, but not before the jutsu completed, causing the dome of electricity to explode, with his scream at the sudden pain echoing within it. With the explosion ended, Shao Kahn was seen on one knee, each half of the now dead Karui in each hand, streaks of lightning going across his body. Shao Kahn dropped the 2 pieces of his now dead opponent and tried to stand up but fell to his knees. His pupil faded away until a mere outline of them left. Various areas in his body showed his skin burned off or ripped, revealing the muscles beneath the skin, and the right side of his face and eye were gone, revealing the bloody skull beneath. His body spasmed as electricity shot up his body in random intervals, unable to think, unable to focus. His left eye saw Karui's soul floating in front of him and slowly lifted his hand, flinching with each spasm until the soul gravitated to his chest. With bursts of electricity shocking his body, he placed the soul into his chest, and with a burst of red energy, the wounds began to heal slowly until he was back to normal, but now he was shaken. Why? Shao Kahn thought to himself as he lifted his hand and saw that it was shaking. Focus, regroup, Shao Kahn thought harshly, and moments later, the shaking stopped. Get CLSE, the voice said, but it was a little louder, causing Shao Kahn to look back at Karui's body. Had she spoken? He had her soul, but those words, they sounded very close. Shao Kahn stood up in the crater that was left and looked to the face of the dead Karui, and gave it a nod and said, "Close, but no cigar." Shao Kahn leapt out of the crater and landed on the ground and looked into the distance at the crater that was left from Choji to the one he just left, and said, "Very skilled. They would be perfect for my army. Doton, Doskiryu, Earth Style, Earth Dragon." Itachi voice suddenly shouted, sending an Earth Dragon charging towards the standing Shao Kahn. "And here comes another!" Shao Kahn shouted, and with a mighty swing of his hand, he punched the dragon hard, sending the dragon exploding against the ground. He then twisted his body, a red orb of energy flowing into his hand before he launched it towards the Uchiha. Itachi vanished in a flurry of black feathers before he appeared before Shao Kahn, his Mangekyo Sharingan spinning wildly. Amaterasu! From the right eye of Itachi, dozens of pitch-black flames came flying forth towards Shao Kahn. Shao Kahn summoned a red orb of energy around him to block from downpour of the black fire. But even through the orb, Shao Kahn could feel the heat of the flames above and around him. Shao Kahn leapt into the air as the orb around him shattered, and he elbowed Itachi in the face before grabbing both of his legs and launching him down towards the ground. Itachi disappeared with a flurry of black feathers and appeared in the middle of his flames. The flames then swirled around Itachi's body and formed a large black dragon with glowing purple eyes. "Go!" Itachi commanded. The dragon roared and charged towards Shao Kahn, who formed another red orb, but the minute the dragon clashed against his shield, the heat of the dragon quickly proved formidable. "What amazing power you have!" Shao Kahn yelled, his eyes locked on Itachi's cold ones. "I cannot wait to have you as my personal enforcer!" Shao Kahn shouted before he forced his red orb forward, shooting through the dragon and towards Itachi, who leapt to the left to avoid it before the orb exploded. Itachi smirked as he suddenly flickered in front of Shao Kahn and shouted, "Doton Barita Nakuru, Earth Style, Boulder Knuckle." The ground cracked and a large amount of stone and dirt gathered around Itachi's left hand, and he punched the warrior hard in the face, making Shao Kahn skid backwards, the stone and dirt falling from his face. With a furious scowl, Shao Kahn dashed towards Itachi and threw a right hook, but Itachi avoided it and aimed a kick to his head. Shao Kahn punched the leg away and slammed his palm into Itachi's chest, making the shinobi skid backwards, but Itachi recovered and managed to avoid a few strikes from Shao Kahn. "Stay still," Shao Kahn hissed. Itachi ducked a slow roundhouse kick and used Shao Kahn's outstretched leg as a launch pad by leaping on top of it, and then landing a hard knee him in his face, but Shao Kahn's head barely moved back from the hit. Itachi flipped off the leg and then dashed backwards to avoid a haymaker while forming the familiar jutsu and shouted, "Kage Bushin no Jutsu!" 3 clones came to life around Itachi and all of them shouted, "Katan, Hiryu no Jutsu, Fire Style, Fire Dragon Jutsu!" Shao Kahn could only smirk as he was hit with the strong attack, but at the last possible moment, his red energy whipped around him, forming a shield from the attack, causing an explosion from the colliding energy. When the smoke cleared, Shao Kahn stood within in his orb with 4 of the dragons embedded into the orb helplessly. "Damn it!" Itachi hissed out angrily. "That's all you've got?" Shao Kahn asked before he yelled, forcing his orb to burst apart, causing the dragons to split apart, but the scattered flames remained in the air. The dragons then reformed into one large dragon, now created with red flames which swirled around Shao Kahn. "Go!" the Khan commanded. The dragon roared before it dashed towards Itachi at top speed. "Doton, Dorihiki, Earth Style, Mud Wall!" Itachi and the 3 clones immediately shouted after forming the seals and slamming his hands to the ground, causing the 4 walls to sprout up in front of the main Itachi. The dragon smashed through 3 of the 4 walls before its body exploded due to becoming weakened after the 3rd wall, but seconds later, the final wall in front of Itachi exploded, revealing Shao Kahn behind it with his fist extended, which slammed into Itachi's face, sending Itachi flying backwards through the air and crashing through the hotel building Naruto and his group had started the battle in. Itachi bounced off the ceiling and fell down to the floor and groaned in pain. That really hurt. Itachi began to rise from his feet, but the building began to shake beneath him, causing Itachi to stumble back and forth. With an explosion from behind him, Shao Kahn, with a red energy orb around him, appeared and made an attempt to slam into Itachi, but the shinobi leapt to the right to avoid it. But when Itachi landed, Shao Kahn made a quick U-turn and slammed into the shinobi with his right shoulder, sending them at a downward angle through the building before crashing against the ground. When the smoke cleared, Shao Kahn stood above the Itachi victoriously, his right hand extended with his palm pointing at the downed shinobi. I win! A crimson orb of energy began to form in his palm, but then, a painful pulse rippled through his body and the orb flickered from red to green and then back to red before evaporating entirely. What? Shao Kahn thought with anger. Having trouble? A voice laughed within his head. Shao Kahn narrowed his eyes in anger. You're doing this. You finally noticed. Yes, you little ape. Me, Rashi's pet. As you called me. The voice replied angrily. I am no pet to no one. I am the mighty Yambi, Son Goku. Shao Kahn's widened in disbelief. He thought he had fully absorbed him. He even felt the enormous power when he and Rashi came into his body. That cannot be. I absorbed you. Shao Kahn yelled into his head. Did you really think I would allow you to use my soul as your power-up with all that you did to me? Brainwashing my container when his soul and body belonged to me? Shao Kahn felt a powerful pulse go through his body as 7 souls flew from it and darted into the air as Shao Kahn fell to his knees. He lifted his hands to try and force the 7 souls back, but another painful pulse rocked his body and 12 more souls exploded from his body. Shao Kahn managed to force the 12 souls that tried to escape back to his body and felt the power return. But now, he felt it harder to keep them within him. Not by a long shot, Kahn. For your transgressions, you're going to die today and I will personally see to it. Son Goku said with a victorious laugh. No matter creature, I will have killed everyone before you even start to weaken me. Shao Kahn thought as he stood up on his feet. And when I do, you will submit to my might. We'll see, dead man. Was Son Goku's only reply. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu! A voice shouted, snapping Shao Kahn from his thoughts. Seconds later, a large orange-red comet slammed into Shao Kahn, causing him to skid backwards before he forcefully threw the jutsu into the air, causing the jutsu to explode above him. Shao Kahn turned his head to see Uchiha Sasuke panting with his Sharingan activated. Stay away from him! Sasuke shouted. Damn it! Itachi muttered beneath his breath weakly. Shao Kahn turned away from Itachi and asked, And who will make me? Sasuke let out a shout and launched himself towards Shao Kahn and delivered a flying kick, which Shao Kahn sidestepped and then effortlessly blocked 2 quick jabs from Sasuke before he retaliated with a boot to the chest, but Itachi leapt up and kicked Shao Kahn's boot to the right to keep it from hitting Sasuke and then leapt up to elbow to Shao Kahn's face. Shao Kahn's head whipped to the left, but he instantly turned around and caught Itachi's next fist and pulled him into a hard punch to Itachi's gut before he twisted his body and kicked Sasuke in the face, sending Sasuke sprawling backwards to the ground. Sasuke rolled to his feet and formed several hand seals and shouted, Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, Fire Style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Sasuke began to blow volleys of fireballs towards Shao Kahn, with several hitting his back and chest when the Khan turned around and charged towards him. But Itachi quickly formed a few hand seals before he said, Katan Ananomuchi Fire Style Flame Whip. He took a deep breath and blew out a stream of fire, and then grabbed the end of it and whipped it towards the waist of Shao Kahn, stopping his movement. With a glint of his right eye, Itachi then said, Amaterasu, Ryuka no Jutsu, Amaterasu, Dragon Flame Jutsu. With a deep breath, Itachi exhaled that black flame which shot up the flame whip as the black flames began to form the head of a dragon. Shao Kahn grabbed the whip and pulled at it sharply, ignoring the flames licking at his waist, and with a roar, he pulled it apart, but it was too late for Shao Kahn to avoid the Amaterasu dragon head from slamming into his chest. Shao Kahn stumbled backwards with an agonizing scream as the black flames burned at his skin, but with a shout, green energy exploded from his body to evaporate the flames, leaving a large scar on his chest. But now Shao Kahn felt a little weaker after that explosion of power. Sasuke, having copied his brother's jutsu for the flame whip, quickly casted that jutsu as well and launched it around Shao Kahn's neck and pulled at it sharply, causing Shao Kahn to take a tiny step towards Sasuke. Shao Kahn let out a deep growl and yanked on the flame whip hard, causing Sasuke to whip towards him sharply, and when he got a hold of the younger Uchiha, he swung him hard and threw him into Itachi, sending them both to the ground. Shao Kahn gritted his teeth in anger as he watched Sasuke and Itachi rise to their feet, and with a mighty leap, he landed in front of them and kicked Sasuke so hard, Sasuke was thrown to his feet, where Shao Kahn then delivered a hard boot to his chest, sending Sasuke soaring backwards. Seeing this, Itachi launched himself forward and tried to land 3 jabs, but Shao Kahn blocked all 3, connected his hands together, and delivered a sickening blow to Itachi's head, sending him to the ground face first. Shao Kahn lifted up his leg and delivered a brutal kick to Itachi's right arm, breaking it in several places, causing him to scream. Shao Kahn then lifted Itachi up and delivered a brutal headbutt, causing blood to instantly leave Itachi's head and mouth. Releasing his arm, Shao Kahn watched as Itachi stumbled and fell onto one knee, and with a dash with green energy, Shao Kahn landed a hard knee to Itachi's jaw, sending Itachi into the air, where Shao Kahn then delivered a brutal uppercut, sending Itachi high into the air, where he spun repeatedly before slamming into the ground hard. "Now Red Ice, it's time for you to join me," Shao Kahn said as he held out 2 fingers, which began to glow a bright green as Itachi struggled to lean off the ground, and just as he did, Shao Kahn fired 2 beams of green energy through Itachi's right shoulder and stomach, causing him to gasp out in agony as it pierced through his back. Sasuke, who laid a few feet away from Itachi, saw this and felt his eyes widen in horror. "Itachi!" Sasuke yelled before he forced himself to his feet, only to fall to the ground in agony due to his broken ribs. Shao Kahn looked to Sasuke as Itachi's body hit the ground and walked over to Sasuke and picked the genin off the ground by his hair and said, "Hee, don't worry, you'll be joining him, so dash." Without warning, Tayuya dashed into the scene, an ethereal green shadow following her movements as she leapt into the air and slammed her knee into the side of Shao Kahn's face, sending him flying to the side and forcing him to release Sasuke. Tayuya landed on the ground with fury in her glowing green eyes. "You, take that gut, get the fuck out of here. I have bone to pick with this son of a bitch, impatient bitch," Hinata said calmly as she shimmered into existence beside her. "Go take the clan killer out of here. We will take it from here." Sasuke groaned, but he nodded and dragged himself to Itachi, who was slowly bleeding out, and began to fruitlessly drag him away. Meanwhile, Hinata and Tayuya walked up to Shao Kahn with Hinata growling out, "On your feet, murderer! You will pay for all the lives you have stolen in my world." Shao Kahn looked up and stood up onto his feet and said, "You look fully healed. Edenian magic, I'm assuming. A handy tool. Enough talk. You die here." Tayuya hissed out. Shao Kahn chuckled darkly. "Try your best to kill me then," Shao Kahn muttered before he dashed to Tayuya and Hinata. Ruins of Konohagakure no Sato, Uzumaki Naruto. As if he was Raiden, Naruto darted through hall to hall with his feet off the ground, soaring as fast as he could to the screams that he heard. After 5 minutes of running, Naruto found himself in the hallway that led to the Hokage's office. As he stood there, he could see the dead bodies of his Team 8, Team Kumo, Team 10 and his own team, Team 7 along with Anko, with the sensei of each team hanging on the ceiling above them, their blood sliding down the walls. Naruto took a shuddered breath and pushed on, trying to keep his eyes on the office, despite the blood of his comrades splashing with each step he took. The minute Naruto got to the door, he kicked the door open and saw something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. There they were, Quan Chi, and he was standing above Sakura's dead body, her dull emerald eyes gazing at the doorway, a sword embedded in her chest. The elder Sub-Zero, and he was standing in front of the frozen pieces Hinata. The shards that held her face was etched in terror. And then there was Shao Kahn, who stood in front of a headless Haku and a headless Kotoha, their bodies strung up in a cross position above the Hokage's desk, where their heads sat, both of them wet with tears, frozen in fear. He was too late. As he stared at the bodies of Haku, Hinata, Sakura and Kotoha, he found his mind flashing back to his beautiful wife and son, huddled together as Quan Chi, disguised as Sub-Zero, approached him, the imposter's hands dripping with Hanzo's, well, his blood. The image of his wife and son being brutally murdered and the images of his friends, allies and those close to his heart began to switch rapidly until something in Naruto snapped. But in the shadows, mournful crimson eyes appeared and a soft voice whispered, "I'm so sorry." Ruins of Tanzaku Town. Hyuga Hinata and Cage Tayuya vs. Shao Kahn. The battle between Shao Kahn, Hinata and Tayuya. The Kunoichi had initially gotten the upper hand on Shao Kahn, but the Kahn had managed to split them up by smacking Hinata through a building, leaving him and Tayuya The battle between the two of them were a fierce fight, but Tayuya was caught with hard right fist, which dazed her greatly before she was tossed into a building where Shao Kahn then fired a green orb at it, destroying the building completely. Hinata had seen this and grew enraged and quickly engaged Shao Kahn in battle, but Shao Kahn managed to grab Hinata and pull her close before charging his aura around the two of them. Hinata let out a loud scream as Shao Kahn squeezed her body tightly with his arms, his aura invading Hinata's body, causing her chakra to weaken with every pulse of the Khan's power. After a brief struggle, Hinata broke out of Shao Kahn's grasp with a loud yell and turned around to land a solid blow on Shao Kahn's face, but the warrior's head didn't even budge from the hit. "My daughter, your hits are nothing!" Shao Kahn said with a crazed laugh as he gripped the kunoichi's wrist and pulled her close to land a hard knee to Hinata's stomach, causing her to lose her breath. Shao Kahn then pushed Hinata's head back to push her away, then pulled her into a harsh clothesline, sending Hinata spiraling in the air behind him and the ground. Just then, Tayuya dashed out with an ethereal shadow following her movements and leapt up to kick Shao Kahn in the chest with a dropkick, which caused him to skid back. Tayuya landed on the ground and quickly got on her feet beside the downed Hinata. "Hang back, princess. I'll take care of this damn thing," Tayuya told her as she rushed past Hinata to fight Shao Kahn. Seeing Tayuya dashing towards him, Shao Kahn held out his right hand and fired bolts of green energy towards Tayuya, but she maneuvered around the blasts before she leapt up and slammed her knee under Shao Kahn's chin, making Shao Kahn's head whip back, 3 souls escaping his body. "Still no challenge?" Shao Kahn murmured with narrow eyes, forcing his head down to face Tayuya, despite the latter's knee trying to force it back up, but Shao Kahn grabbed Tayuya by her neck and began to choke her, causing her to squirm against his strong grip. Shao Kahn punched Tayuya twice in the stomach before taking her opponent's leg, lifting Tayuya in the air and slamming her back first into his knee, causing Tayuya to howl out in pain while simultaneously causing his aura to flare, tearing though the chakra Tayuya had out of her body. "Let us see how far I can bend you, Elder God Killer," Shao Kahn taunted, spitting out the last words in Tayuya's face, but he was suddenly caught off guard by Hinata's leg slamming into his face, causing him to let go of Tayuya as well as fly backwards into a desolate house. Tayuya, who was going to fall to the ground, was caught by Hinata, who sat her upright and said, "This is insane, Tayuya. How did the others manage to hold out for so long against him? I don't know, but this is bad, princess. We can barely land a hit on him, and we're barely able to stay afloat in our current state." Tayuya responded with a hoarse voice, forcing herself to stand, then added, "But we can't give up now. We're the last stand against him." "Heh, who said I'm giving up?" Hinata questioned with a haughty tone. "I still have a lot more in me. Glad we agree on something," Tayuya said. Shao Kahn charged towards the pair as he shouted, "Don't get comfortable." The pair glanced at one another before nodding and charging towards Shao Kahn with a battle cry, and when the three met, Hinata threw a sharp left kick while Tayuya threw a crisp right hook. Seeing these coming, Shao Kahn blocked the fist with his left forearm while blocking the kick with his bent right leg before forcing the limbs away and immediately punched Hinata in the face, then kneeing Tayuya in the stomach, then gave them both a clothesline, sending the two whipping to the ground. Hinata flipped to her feet and launched herself into the air while Tayuya got onto her feet and dashed forward towards Shao Kahn, and while Hinata kicked Shao Kahn in the head, Tayuya elbowed Shao Kahn in his back, making Shao Kahn soar forward. "Now!" Tayuya yelled before she and Hinata dashed towards the soaring Shao Kahn, but Shao Kahn immediately skidded to a stop, turned around and dashed forward and tackled both of them and charged towards the hotel this entire battle started in, their bodies crashing through a brick wall. When the three crashed into the destroyed hotel building, Shao Kahn skidding to a stop while the pair of kunoichi fell to the ground with groans of pain, but after a moment of this, Hinata and Tayuya rose to their feet and once more entered combat with Shao Kahn. Shao Kahn blocked a left punch from Tayuya, then slammed his head against Tayuya's before he twisted his body and kneed Hinata in the stomach, making both kunoichi stagger backwards from their respective blows. Shao Kahn quickly grabbed the girls by the neck and lifted them up, his aura forming around him. "Die!" Shao Kahn exclaimed as the energy around Shao Kahn started to get larger, but Hinata summoned her Edenian magic, a shimmer violet-colored mist, around her while green energy wisps began to flowing from Tayuya's body and then combined with Hinata's, causing a shimmering green aura to combat Shao Kahn's own energy, trying to keep the now hazardous energy from overtaking them. The energy of the three was so powerful that the building around them slowly began to rumble from the sheer force of the combating energies, but Shao Kahn's was slowly starting to overpower the two kunoichi. Both Hinata and Tayuya forced more of their energy from their bodies as they tried to get themselves out of Shao Kahn's powerful grip, but Shao Kahn tightened it more, causing both to scream out in pain. Then a pulse rippled through Shao Kahn's body and 20 souls exploded from his body, weakening the energy and allowing Tayuya to land a solid kick to his balls immediately, which caused Shao Kahn to drop them both before hunching over in pain. Hinata and Tayuya fell to the ground while grasping at their necks, coughing and wheezing while Shao Kahn staggered back from the hard kick to his unprotected area, where 9 souls were forcefully expelled from his body. "You uncultured!" Shao Kahn muttered, growing more furious from the underhanded tactic, and let out a loud roar, his energy whipping around him violently, making the building shake more. "Well, that made him really made. Nice going." Hinata wheezed out as she stood up on her feet, rubbing at her neck lightly. "Well, we had to do something, otherwise we would have ended up like everyone else he's killed," Tayuya retorted while getting on one knee, panting loudly. Before Hinata could say anything, Shao Kahn swiftly dashed forward towards the pair and tackled Tayuya while kneeing Hinata in the face, causing Hinata and fly through the large hole the three had made earlier. Shao Kahn continued to run forward with his arms wrapped around Tayuya, who was beating on Shao Kahn's back, trying in vain to get out of Shao Kahn's vice grip. When Shao Kahn then leapt into the air as high as he could, and once he was high enough in the air, he let out a loud laugh filled with insanity and rage as he took a sharp nosedive towards the ground, his energy whipping around the two as he dashed down. Tayuya turned her head and saw the ground coming up really fast before she slammed viciously into the ground with Shao Kahn on top of her, causing the air to escape from her lungs, and just a few moments later, the ground beneath the two began to crack before completely exploding around them, sending the earth around them to rise around them. Shao Kahn removed himself from Tayuya's unconscious form and let out a victorious roar, but that was quickly cut short by Hinata's foot slamming into Shao Kahn's face, sending the Kahn flying into a small house which then exploded when Shao Kahn's back slammed into an oven. "Tayuya, come on, get up!" Hinata exclaimed while shaking her partner awake, a concerned look on her face. Tayuya let out a low groan as she came to. "Lazy bitch, I thought I was going to have to do this on my own," Hinata said with a sigh of relief, wiping beads of sweat from her face. "Yeah, that would have been terrible," Tayuya retorted with a sarcastic tone in her voice. Just then, the two felt Shao Kahn's energy waver slightly before skyrocketing, letting the two of them know that he was very pissed off. The two tired and beaten kunoichi stood up on there and panted, and Tayuya murmured, "We gotta keep going." Hinata let out an exhausted laugh and said, "Can't let their deaths be in vain." "Well shit, let's keep trying then," Tayuya gasped out before the pair let out a dual shout as they launched themselves at top speed towards the charging Shao Kahn. But just as Hinata and Tayuya got close enough, Tayuya dashed to the side at the last second and jumped up in the air while Hinata and Shao Kahn immediately clashed in a brief flurry of punches and kicks. But when Hinata landed a solid punch to Shao Kahn's stomach, Shao Kahn took a step back and was immediately kicked in the face by Tayuya, sending him backwards, but he skidded to a stop, still on his feet. With several souls escape his body and floating the sky above, Tayuya instantly dashed towards him and began to launch green orbs at him at a rapid pace, but Shao Kahn dashed through the shadow balls and punched Tayuya in her jaw, which sent her to the ground hard. Hinata immediately flew forward with her Edenian magic and slammed her hip against Shao Kahn's face, sending the Kahn flying backwards, but once again, he skidded to a stop. Hinata landed beside Tayuya and helped her to her feet. Without warning, Shao Kahn shot out towards the two and slammed his elbow into Hinata's face, sending her crashing to the ground before he twisted his body to land a hard kick to Tayuya's side, sending her stumbling to the side. Tayuya then threw a kick to Shao Kahn's slide, but he caught the leg and lifted her up into the air before Tayuya threw a shadow ball into his face, causing it explode in green sparks and forcing him to release her as 10 more souls was forcefully expelled from his body. Tayuya landed on her back and flipped to her feet only to be kicked hard in the chest by Shao Kahn, sending her to Hinata, who had just gotten back on her feet and managed to catch her while Shao Kahn fell to one knee as 5 souls escaped from his back. Seeing Shao Kahn charging for him, Hinata tossed Tayuya in the air and blocked Shao Kahn's right fist and immediately blocked another one. Soon Shao Kahn was throwing blows towards the blocking Hinata, who blocked as best as she could before his fists broke through her guard and began to relentlessly punch her in her face and stomach rapidly. But when he was going to throw another punch, Shao Kahn was kicked on top of his head by Tayuya, sending Shao Kahn's head slamming down to the ground hard, causing the ground beneath him to completely crack and then break. Shao Kahn got onto one knee and blocked 2 axe kicks from the pair and forced their legs up into the air, and then nailed them both in the stomach, sending them skidding backwards before fall on their asses. Taiyuya got to her feet first, and with a burst of green energy, she dashed forward with her right leg out and nailed Shao Kahn in the stomach before flipping backwards and kicking Shao Kahn beneath his chin, sending him into the air. Hinata flipped to her feet and ran towards Taiyuya and leapt onto her shoulder, and then jumped above Shao Kahn and stomped both feet down. Shao Kahn swerved his body just as Hinata's feet were going to connect with his head and punched Hinata in her jaw, sending her whipping into the air while he landed on the ground. Once he landed, Shao Kahn was instantly kicked in the gut by Taiyuya's green glowing right foot, but he returned the kick with an elbow underneath Taiyuya's jaw, making her head whip back before grabbing Taiyuya's neck and slammed Taiyuya into the ground hard, causing it to rise up around the two. Shao Kahn then lifted Taiyuya and summoned his energy around him, but then Hinata flickered beside Shao Kahn and punched Shao Kahn in the jaw, forcing the Kahn to let go of Taiyuya's neck while also sending Shao Kahn flying to the side. Hinata fell to her knees and panted heavily as Taiyuya struggled to lean off the ground and muttered, "I'm tapped out. Same, I don't think we can stave off death any longer." Hinata muttered in pain. "Well, it was nice fighting with you, you daughter of a bitch," Taiyuya said as she rose onto her knees. "Likewise, lesser cage." Hinata panted out as the pair looked ahead at Shao Kahn, who was slowly walking towards them. It was then a large explosion was heard behind them. It was so loud that it rocked the entire area around them. "What the fuck?" The pair looked behind them to see a pillar of crimson fire that was so huge, it reached the sky above them. But within it, they saw a dark silhouette, with eyes that glowed crimson. Shao Kahn narrowed his eyes as he took a step back in alarm. There was so much power within that. He had never felt anything like it before. "What is this?" Shao Kahn questioned. It was then he heard the laughter of Son Goku within his mind. "You've never felt this. This is the power of the Biju. It must two tails strong. Wait, that chakra, I know it well. Oh my god, you truly made a grave mistake on this day." Son Goku then began to laugh. "It seems my sister will avenge me after all." Shao Kahn ignored the beast and kept his eyes on the pillar of flames, and it was then he felt it. "It can't be the firefly," Shao Kahn muttered, panting slightly. Despite him managing to fight off the two kunoichi, Shao Kahn knew that he had grown weaker. Each hit he had suffered from fighting Hinata and Taiyuya had forced several souls to escape his body, which made him weaker. Add in the sadistic Yanbi who was also forcing his power source from his body. Shao Kahn knew that with a full rage revenant like the firefly with full-on hellfire, he was in for a tough battle. But at the same time, Shao Kahn couldn't help but let a wide smirk form on his face as he stared down at the enraged Hellfire Revenant. If there was one thing in the world that excited him more was to fight someone as skilled and as powerful as himself, and make them submit to him. An animalistic roar filled with rage and anguish echoed across the desolate village as the flame pillar exploded, revealing not Naruto, but a different figure. The figure was wearing 2 black and gold greaves which had a gold scorpion design along with baggy black pants that held a large silver belt with a skull in the middle of it. Coming from beneath the belt was a gold-colored sash with a gold-colored metal trim that hung down to the figure's thighs. The figure's chest had 2 thick, wide gold-armored straps that were across his bare chest and went down behind the belt, but on both straps of armor were 2 lines of 3 golden spikes with a single spike underneath the 2 lines. On the figure's chest were large hellfire-made chains that were attached to the shackles around the neck of the figure and the sides of the belt. From his knuckles to bicep, his right arm was covered in thin hellfire-made chains while the left arm bore a black metal gauntlet that bore a gold scorpion on it, and finally, attached to the body a bare skull with crimson hellfire flowing from it. Flowing around the figure was a crimson flamed cloak that held 2 fox ears and 2 tails attached to the aura, swirling wildly. "What the fuck?" Taiyuya muttered in shock. "That can't be Naruto. That's not Naruto. That's not even Scorpion," Hinata said. The figure let out a hellish roar of "Shao Kahn!" before dashing towards the large man, particles of hellfire following his body. Before Shao Kahn could blink, the figure's body slammed into the Kahn, and both were sent flying into the air. "Hinata! Taiyuya!" Sakura's voice rang out. The two looked behind them and saw Sakura running towards them. "Are you two alright?" Sakura asked. "We'll be fine, but where have you been?" Hinata questioned. "Healing Kakashi-sensei and Itachi, but he's not going to make it from what Anko-san told me. She's doing the best she can to keep him alive until we get back to that Hisako village," Sakura said with a frown on her face. "But what happened to Shao Kahn?" "Well, Naruto, or someone like him took off to battle him," Tayuya explained. They could see Sakura's eyes widen in joy at Naruto's name, but Hinata quickly added. But he's not himself. He's changed into this corrupted form, driven by only rage and death. But it's still Naruto-kun, Sakura said before she noticed the trail of hellfire on the ground. He went that way? Sakura asked. Tayuya nodded, but Hinata was suspicious. Why do you ask? Hinata asked. Because I'm going after him to help him, Sakura said before she ran off, much to the distress of Hinata. Shit! We need to go after her, Hinata said as she leapt to her feet only to fall onto her knees, exhaustion immediately hitting her. Fuck everything! Tayuya exclaimed. Field of flowers, Momochi Haku. I'm here again, Haku said, her eyes gazing at the flowers around her. You are, the voice replied behind her, causing Haku to turn around. It was that girl, the one that had saved her life, the one that had spoken to her once before. You were so close, Haku, the girl said with a kind smile on her face. So close to heeding my call, but you failed to make that final push. I don't know what the call is. I wish I did. I could have fought and defeat that lava-making fool a lot earlier if I had my chakra, Haku exclaimed. I know, but I need you to focus and listen, the girl said firmly. Because Naruto is going to need your help. Now more than ever. My help? He's going to need my help? Haku asked, a frustrated tone in her voice. I haven't been able to use my chakra one time since Hisako, and with each combat situation, I've watched people get hurt or worse. I told you what you must do, the girl responded, her body flicking briefly, her eyes changing into a static white. Yet you do not listen, Haku let out an exhausted laugh. I've been listening and nothing has been done. Do you know how useless I feel without my chakra? Without any of the skills that I was raised to use every single day. My Naruto-kun is out there fighting with my allies and I'm stuck here, unable to do anything. How can I help when I have no chakra to do so? Haku fell to her knees in the flowers and punched the ground, tears of frustration falling down her face. Since I've lost the ability, I've watched my friends get hurt and die. I just want to help. Haku then looked up to the girl and said, Please, I'd do anything. The two stayed silent for a moment, their eyes locked firmly on one another before the girl nodded, and with a flash, that familiar Naginata appeared in the girl's hand, but before Haku could comment on it, the girl stabbed Haku in the chest and through the heart with it, causing Haku to gasp out in pain and shock. The girl leaned up above Haku's body and leaned down and placed a tender kiss on Haku's forehead and murmured, Now listen, causing Haku's eyes to widen as blood dribbled down her lips. The girl pulled back with a dark grin and said, And heed my call. Haku weakly looked at the girl above her and caught the dark grin, and it was then she felt it. A rage that she had never felt before filling her veins, distorting her very pure heart. The faces of the dead Kiba, Shino and Akamaru floated into her head as her chocolate eyes began to slowly turning into static white. Her body began to glow a sickly green chakra as her skin became gray, and with a flash, the Naginata that had pierced her chest was now in her hands, and that familiar rush of power slammed into her, causing a hate-filled scream to leave her lips. The girl leaned away as Haku fell to the ground and began to writhe and scream, multiple ethereal green silhouettes of Haku stretching out from her body out of her body. Haku screamed with all her might, her voice echoing as the shockwave of chakra flew from her body as she arched against the ground. The girl watched as the corrupt energy flowed from her body and knelt down and said, Now fight it, Haku. Do not let the corrupt energy corrupt you. The words fell on deaf ears as the energy became as thick as mist. Do not let it take you. Think of the things you must protect. Use that. Harness that. You must be stronger than hate it's drenched in, the female said. Haku's body spasmed repeatedly, and she let out another scream, but then she saw it. A memory that seemed to be a lifetime ago. Flashback. Village of Wave. Despite him being a shifty old drunk, Tazuna was the only one brave enough to want to see this village shine with hope and love again. Naruto began as Haku watched him stare at his two hands before he looked at the bridge. He, and all of those who are building that bridge, are fighting against Gato to bring light back to this place. Despite the dangers, the purpose I had before was selfish and only benefited me. But now, I want to be that light, Naruto said with a determined smile on his face. Haku couldn't help but feel happy and yet sad at Naruto's words. If only he knew she was the one who threatened to snuff out that light. I want to be the light that ends the suffering. Not only for this village or even my own, but for the world. I want to be the light that shines even through the darkest of nights. That is my purpose. That is a wonderful purpose, Naruto-kun. I'm proud that you took up such a noble purpose. Haku said to him softly, her feelings 100% genuine. Naruto blushed at her words and gingerly took her hands into his and said, "But I can't do it alone. I want you to help me bring that light as well." Haku was stunned by his words, but while she was happy, she felt terrible for feeling this way. He didn't know she was going to crush his dreams. He didn't know that she and her father figure was going to fight and kill them all. He didn't know they were no longer going to be together. Haku lowered her head and whispered, "I don't think I could be the light you want me to be." Haku let a small tear escape her eyes and trailed down her cheek, but to her surprise, she felt Naruto lift her head slowly to look into his ocean blue eyes. He then lifted his left hand to wipe the tear away with a frown on his face. "Anyone can do good in the world, Haku-chan. It doesn't matter what happened in the past," Naruto told her gently. "Do you really think so? Do you really think I could be redeemed for all the pain I've caused?" Haku asked, trying to hold back the hope from her voice. Could she truly be redeemed by helping him? "I do," Naruto replied instantly, brushing away another tear that strayed from her eye. Haku gave him a smile. The two stared into each other's eyes before Naruto leaned forward and gave her a gentle kiss that caused electricity to shoot down her spine. Naruto then pulled away with his face completely red. Neither of them said a word for what seemed like a lifetime before she let a soft smile begin to form on her face, and just as he did before, she leaned up and kissed his lips, returning his affections. "I'm your Naruto-kun," Haku thought. End flashback. Field of Flowers. Momochi Haku. Haku opened her eyes, which was now glowing a faint gold and white as she leaned up off the ground and saw the smiling face of the female. "You did it," the female said happily. Haku looked at her hands. She could feel her chakra flowing through his veins, but there was another power flowing along with it. It made he feel different and yet wonderful. This power?" Haku asked. "That's the power of an angel," the female said gently. "The power that I gave you when I brought you back to life." Haku looked at her and repeated, "Back to life? Power of an angel?" The female smiled and said, "You must hurry. Naruto's mind has snapped, and he's gone mindless with anger and ETH. Go save your beloved before it's too late." "But how do I do that?" Haku asked with a panicked tone. "Do what you do best," the female said. Before Haku could say anything, the entire world went white, the last image she saw being the smiling face of Chiharu. Ruins of Tanzaku Town. The Hellfire Revenant vs. Shao Kahn. With a crash, the Hellfire Revenant and Shao Kahn crashed against the ground hard, causing the earth to crack from the impact before the Revenant dragged Shao Kahn's body against the ground before he picked him up and delivered a brutal right hook to Shao Kahn's face, sending him flying back and slamming to a brick wall. The Hellfire Revenant let out another hellish roar and charged forward. Shao Kahn lifted his hand and began to fire green orbs towards him, but the crimson aura caused it to explode upon impact without slowing down, and landed a hard jab to Shao Kahn's stomach, which caused Shao Kahn's eyes to widen in pain. Shao Kahn grabbed the hand and pushed it from his gut, but the Revenant grabbed Shao Kahn's head and began to squeeze as hard. Shao Kahn punched the Revenant in the stomach 3 times before kicking him in the chest, sending Revenant sliding back, but in return, Shao Kahn was repeatedly punched in his gut before getting a hard uppercut and then kicked in the chest, sending him crashing through the brick wall. Shao Kahn flipped to his feet, the wounds he accumulated slowly healing up from the blows before Shao Kahn said, "Nice try, Bu dash." He was cruelly interrupted by the Hellfire Revenant's fist slamming into his face, which sent him flying into the air and slamming to the ground. "When things go wrong," Son Goku taunted as Shao Kahn rose to his feet. "Look at you. The gauntlet you ran thinking you had all of this power, and now look at you. I haven't lost, and I will not lose," Shao Kahn shouted within his mind before he shot up to his feet and punched the Revenant in the head, but to his shock, the figure didn't flinch from the blow and instantly jabbed his fist against Shao Kahn's face repeatedly with each hand, each punch becoming harder against Shao Kahn's face. Shao Kahn kicked Hellfire Revenant's chest, which caused him to slide back before he dashed forward and continued the quick and violent onslaught, scratching, clawing and punching Shao Kahn any and everywhere with hellish shout of, "Die!" Shao Kahn blocked and maneuvered against the blows but was caught by a hard left hook to the face, which was followed up with a kick to his right knee, which sent Shao Kahn to one knee before the Hellfire Revenant rained down blows on Shao Kahn's head and torso, each blow covered with crimson hellfire. With each punch, 10 souls flowed from Shao Kahn's body, weakening the Kahn further, but he managed to catch the Revenant's punch and delivered a hard headbutt, but the Revenant didn't budge from it. The Revenant then reared back and delivered his own headbutt, causing blood to fly from Shao Kahn's forehead, making him stagger backwards, a dazed expression on his face. "Kill!" the Hellfire Revenant hissed out, his voice echoing as he began to run towards Shao Kahn. Shao Kahn roared and summoned a green orb to his hand and ducked a leaping punch and slammed it into the Revenant's chest, causing it to explode, which successfully caused the Revenant to fly backwards. However, the Revenant recovered and lunged his left hand forward, which caused the glowing Hellfire chain to fly towards Shao Kahn and pierce his shoulder. "Come to me!" the hellish voice roared as it tugged Shao Kahn forward sharply. Shao Kahn's feet skidded against the ground as he held his ground, but with another sharp tug, Shao Kahn's feet skidded forward before he was thrown forward until he reached the Hellfire Revenant, who leapt into the air and landed a hard punch to Shao Kahn's face, sending him crashing to the ground so hard, Shao Kahn's body rebounded off the ground and back into the air where the Hellfire Revenant landed an uppercut, sending him to the air. "Come to me!" the Revenant yelled as he threw 2 Hellfire chains to Shao Kahn, that pierced his stomach and left shoulder before being tugged down sharply, sending Shao Kahn down to meet the leaping Revenant's knee, which slammed into his face. Shao Kahn rotated into the air before landing on the ground and began to push himself to his feet, blood dripping from his wounds. Shao Kahn looked at the wounds and used the few souls he had left to heal his wounds, but the wounds, while glowing green, was healing him slowly. He looked up to see the Hellfire Revenant walk towards him menacingly, each step leaving a footprint covered in flames. "I will not be beaten by you. That is not up to you," Son Goku stated with a smug expression. "I told you before. You will die by the end of this day for forcing me into that sleep. There is no second chance. No redemption. You are to die here, and I'm going to escort you straight to hell." With a loud yell, Shao Kahn's neon green aura flared around his body until it morphed into an orb, the neon green energy distorting the color around him with every pulse of energy that flew from the orb. In turn, the angered the Hellfire Revenant's own white and yellow aura flared dangerously, accompanied by a roar of fury leaving his lips. "Let's begin!" Shao Kahn yelled as he dashed down to the charging the Hellfire Revenant with his right hand cocked back, ready to strike the Revenant the moment he got close, but he wasn't expecting the Hellfire Revenant's fist to slam into his cheek. The enraged shinobi then let out a yell and grabbed Shao Kahn's face with his outstretched hand and pulled him close by it only to kick Shao Kahn's side, making the warrior fly towards a building, but the Hellfire Revenant quickly appeared in a burst of crimson flames and swung his left arm towards the soaring Shao Kahn, smacking Shao Kahn straight into the ground, making a crater form around his opponent. The Hellfire Revenant then grabbed Shao Kahn's head and rammed it into the ground repeatedly, growling like a wild animal before gripping the monster's hair and start to run, dragging Shao Kahn along with him, but then threw him hard against the ground, causing Shao Kahn to be grinded several feet away from his opponent. With a feral yell that seemed to echo for miles, the Hellfire Revenant leapt high into the air, landed on Shao Kahn's chest, causing Shao Kahn to crash further into the ground, then lifted the Kahn into the air by his hair before slamming him hard into the ground, where he then began to stomp on the warrior's head relentlessly, a cruel, wild smirk on the young super warrior's face. With a roar, green energy exploded from Shao Kahn's body, causing the Revenant to stumble back, and Shao Kahn was back on his feet, but with a burst of crimson flame, the Hellfire Revenant disappeared and then reappeared above Shao Kahn and rammed his foot into Shao Kahn's face, sending the warrior slamming to the ground. Shao Kahn came flying out of the ground and gave the Hellfire Revenant a clothesline, but to his shock, the Hellfire Revenant didn't budge, not one single inch. Shao Kahn watched as the skull had turned to face his before he was viciously punched in his face, sending him rolling against the ground. Shao Kahn flipped to his feet and yelled out, "You won't defeat me!" as he threw a punch towards the shinobi. The Hellfire Revenant caught the fist Shao Kahn had thrown at him, twisted around and slammed Shao Kahn and tossed him over his shoulder. Shao Kahn was sent flying into the air before crashing and skidding across the ground like a pebble skipping across the water before forcing himself to his feet. But the Hellfire Revenant swiftly appeared and delivered a brutal right hook, making Shao Kahn skid across the ground once more, his green energy pulsating lightly. But before he managed to recover, he got on one knee but was then sent skidding across the ground again when the Hellfire Revenant delivered a harsh energy-covered knee to his face. Shao Kahn once again tried to recover, but a roaring Revenant appeared before him and gripped his neck as he dragged him down against the ground, the crimson flames growing around him, making it seem like a crimson arrow was streaking across the ground from an aerial view. The Hellfire Revenant then lifted up Shao Kahn, twisted his body before throwing him against the wall of a building, where the Hellfire Revenant then dashed forward and rammed his elbow against Shao Kahn's face, sending the upper half of the Khan crashing into the building. The Hellfire Revenants grabbed the neck of Shao Kahn and punched the larger man's upper chest, sending him crashing through the wall and down to the ground. Shao Kahn tried to rise to his feet and held out his hand as a green orb began to form before flickering and then vanishing. The Hellfire Revenant stood above Shao Kahn's battered form and let out a wild scream to the heavens while his hellfire flared around him, but then he felt a hard fist slam into his face by Shao Kahn, but the Revenant didn't get sent back from the blow. Instead, the Hellfire Revenant turned against the fist and merely grabbed the wrist and began to squeeze it hard before moving it away from his face, only to stop the other fist that was sent his way by grabbing Shao Kahn's right wrist. Shao Kahn let out a low groan and moved his right knee back and moved it forward to hit the Hellfire Revenant's stomach, but to his horror, the Hellfire Revenant didn't even react to the knee hitting his gut. The Revenant promptly returned the favor by repeatedly slamming his forehead against Shao Kahn's as hard as possible, causing the older warrior to forcibly fall to his knees, but to Shao Kahn's energy exploded into life around the two of them, while his enemy suddenly grabbed onto his wrists with a low laugh. "I got you now!" Shao Kahn yelled out while his energy continued to rise around them. The Hellfire Revenant could slowly feel his energy starting to dwindle and gave Shao Kahn a look. The Hellfire Revenant quickly leapt up and planted both feet into Shao Kahn's face hard and slowly began to pull his body back, his own energy returning to life around him, but he could feel Shao Kahn starting to pull back, as if trying to match his power. The Hellfire Revenant gave another angered sneer and forced more of his power from his body as he began to force his body to straighten out more. He heard Shao Kahn grunting out in pain as the Hellfire Revenant continued to pull his arms away from his body until he finally heard that dull snap from Shao Kahn's arms, causing the warrior to scream out in pain. The Hellfire Revenant wanted to hear the sweet screams even more, so with a furious yell, the Hellfire Revenant pulled on Shao Kahn's broken arms more until both arms of Shao Kahn's were ripped off of Shao Kahn's now howling form. The Hellfire Revenant performed a back flip when he managed to tear Shao Kahn's arms from his body and kicked the now armless Shao Kahn to the ground, where he skidded against the ground and slowed to a stop. The Revenant marched to the now terrified, hurting warrior menacingly, the flames of the shinobi licking at the ground, its heat increasing with every step he took. Without any warning, Shao Kahn let out a furious scream as he lunged forward in an attempt to attack the Hellfire Revenant, but the feral warrior avoided it only to land a solid blow to Shao Kahn's cheek with Shao Kahn's own arm, sending the armless warrior sprawling to the ground, where the Hellfire Revenant quickly ran up and kicked Shao Kahn in his stomach, making Shao Kahn soar into the air. With a roar, the Hellfire Revenant dashed into the air and slammed his opponent's arm into his own stomach before twisting in the air and kicking the warrior down to the ground, but then he dashed down, each dash causing a burst of flame to explode around him before slamming his knees into Shao Kahn's face, sending them both crashing to the ground hard. The Revenant stood up as Shao Kahn struggled to look at the enraged shinobi, who lifted up Shao Kahn's hands and began to beat Shao Kahn with his own arms, snarling darkly with every hit that was given before he fell down, and tossed the arms away and began to brutally punch and slam his forearms down against Shao Kahn's face. For 5 straight minutes, the Hellfire Revenant beat the defenseless Kahn, his snarls and roars growing louder until they were practically screams. The blood splatter from Shao Kahn's body splashed against the Revenant's chest and skull, only to evaporate from the intense heat until a barely alive Shao Kahn was staring up at the Revenant. The lower half and the right side of his face was skinless, revealing his bloody skull and eye socket, where the eye within, along with his left eye, the outline of his pupils still visible but most of it gone. "You!" Shao Kahn garbled out. "Well, my soul-stealing friend, your time is up," Son Goku said with a cackle as the Hellfire Revenant growled out, grasped Shao Kahn's neck with both hands before the Revenant stood up and lifted Shao Kahn into the air. Shao Kahn kicked at the Revenant's chest as he could as crimson flames began to burst into life around Naruto's feet. "I won't let you," Shao Kahn hissed out weakly as the flames began to swirl around the two of them slowly, but then it began to swirl at a much faster pace. The flames around them began to shine brighter and brighter, where the Revenant let out a hellish "Perish!" The Hellfire Revenant's flames wrapped around the two fighters and became a thick pillar of hellfire that shot high into the sky, parting and then shattering the corrupted color of the sky, that while Shao Kahn's screams became fainter until there was nothing but the Hellfire Revenant's hellish scream left. Around him, fire began to explode from the ground around him as he screamed in fury, the flame aura around his body growing dramatically, where he then hunched forward, his arms limp at his side, a hellish, echoing laughing being heard coming from him. "Death flames!" he whispered as another echoing laugh left his mouth before he began to walk away from it all. "Naruto-kun!" A voice shouted out from behind the figure. The being turned around to see Haku standing behind him, a naginata in her hands. The being turned around and said, "Fight? Kill. There will be no more fighting," Haku said as tears fell down her cheeks. "No more killing. You've done what you needed to do. Fight, kill, flames," the Revenant said as he took a step forward towards Haku. "No!" Haku shouted. "This isn't you. This isn't my Naruto-kun. You aren't all about death and flames and fighting. You are so much more than that. This isn't you." The Hellfire Revenant cocked his head to the side. "Stop me?" he questioned. "I promised that I would help you be the light of this world, not burn it all down in flames," Haku said. "If that means I need to fight you and open your eyes, I will do it, Naruto-kun, because I love you and I need you to come back to me." "Haku?" the Revenant whispered, the flames around his skull fading away. Haku let out a watery laugh and said, "Yes, it's me, Haku." "You're Haku, alive?" the Revenant whispered. The crimson cloak began to fade as well as Haku dropped the naginata and ran towards the Revenant, and wrapped her arms around him and held him tight. "I'm alive," Haku replied tearfully. The Hellfire attire began to fade away, leaving the figure completely naked while the skull began to grow muscles on it as well as eyes before skin appeared around his head. His ocean blue pupils fading into view and his blonde hair quickly sprouted from his head. Naruto looked extremely exhausted before he shut his eyes and whispered, "Thank you," before he slumped against her. Haku sat down on the ground and held Naruto's bare, naked body and placed his head on her lap. "Haku-chan!" Sakura's voice yelled, which caused Haku to turn and face her. Sakura looked down at her lap and felt tears appear on her face when she saw Naruto's face. "He's okay," Sakura whispered softly. "He's okay," Haku replied tenderly before she looked back down at him and brushed his blonde hair away from his face. "He will be okay," Haku added. Sakura sat down beside her and also ran her hand through Naruto's hair. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.